Okay, so now we're gonna hear from the second person on Club at Sosome, Stephen McCain. He's also here, and he is, just so that for those of you that don't remember him, he is a twice Olympic gymnast, world champion silver medalist, Hall of Fame inductee. He is a speaker, educator, entrepreneur, and coach to some of the top performers in the world, including actors, stuntmen, circus performers, athletes, and executives. Stephen has a passion for human optimization and performance, increasing health span, and helping others achieving their goals with health. At 50, Stephen believes it's possible to redefine the limitations of age. Please help me welcome Stephen McCain.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. This is awesome. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I'm certain I'm going to be holding this upside down, but we'll figure it out. I have to say, what an amazing presentation by Dr. Sandy. I mean, how lucky are we? I'm always blown away by this. It's like a freight train of cognitive fortitude. Just, at some point it just breaks you down, and you're like, oh my God, she's absolutely right. Like we're in uncharted territory with our sleep. So I'm going to have to go over that presentation quite a bit. I just want to say that I love this group. I love this organization. The smiles, the fact that everyone seems to be somehow tricking this aging process. Every time I meet somebody and I hear their age, I'm always like, wow, this is fantastic. So I just want to applaud you and let you know that as somebody on the outside, I see results and I see a commitment, and it's really inspiring for me, and it's humbling because to be up here getting to share my story, which, when I started my journey, and I guess I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about today. So I just want to share with you how I got into this 15 years ago. Mine will be a little bit more story-driven, a little less science, so it'll be a nice departure from the science. And hopefully it will give you a little bit of a practical framework on how I view longevity, something to hang your hat on. Because let's face it, you can get all this information, but when the rubber meets the road and you got to start putting pills in your mouth and injecting you and doing all this stuff and preparing for sleep and all that, it gets rough, right? I mean, that's when it's all of a sudden it falls apart and you're like, oh, what was that again? So I always like to say, like, have a framework that you can put everything in its right bucket. So hopefully this will go well. So in order to tell you about my longevity journey, I have to go back to a time when I used to be one of the best gymnasts in the world. I two-time Olympian, Hall of Fame inductee, got to compete on every continent except for Antarctica. And I was in film, television, commercial. I performed in the Biennale in Venice, Italy for a whole summer in a museum. It was just I was a Calvin Klein underwear model at one point, believe it or not. It sounds funny saying that now, but that was Adriana Lima, a Victoria's Secret's model. Got to do that show as well. Just so you kind of get an idea of what I did in my sport, I wanted to play a video for you just to, kind of give you an example of what I did. So
this is one of Steve's best potential events, but when you are doing new code gymnastics and it's hard stuff, it's very difficult combinations like this right here. He'll go into his second release. Fingertips got that one. A couple years ago, he would be almost done, but nowhere near now. Hiked Kovacs. Steve McCain came into this competition a legitimate contender to win the national title. It is a title every gymnast that grows up in the United States, they go to bed thinking about winning.
It's awesome to still get applause from something that happened so long ago, and I mean, when I look at it now, I go, geez, what the heck? How did I get to that state? I mean, my goodness, you got to be crazy to commit to something like that, but it's kind of who I am, and that's how I got into longevity. you know, I retired from gymnastics, and of all the things I did in gymnastics, and I pushed myself so hard that at one point my body rejected. I would go on the equipment and it wouldn't let me. My body basically said, I'm done. And I'll never forget, I laid in an MRI machine for the third time in a little over a year, right before my last Olympic push. I was getting close to 30 years old. And I remember laying there like this. It was a wrist injury. And I thought to myself, maybe this is a disease. You know, maybe this gymnastics thing isn't really, you know, I'm not supposed to take it this seriously like this. And I said, no, I'm retiring. I'm not quitting. And I literally told my body, I said, you need to get your shit together. We are finishing this. I'm not quitting. We're going to do this whether you like it or not. There is an entire quantum field of medicine that we are totally unaware of that resides right here. And one day Sandra is going to unpack that for us. But until we get that, just know this. It all starts in the mind, right? It really does. And this was basically my rock bottom. I retired. It was a massive rug pull on my life. All my discipline went away. I slept whenever I wanted. I woke up every single day with a hangover. I started smoking cigarettes. I ate whatever the hell I wanted, fast food. And I thought, I could live off the interest for the rest of my life. I've been working out 6 days a week since I was 10 years old. You know, and let me tell you something. You cannot live off the interest. It goes quick. And so I had a moment. I came home one night. I passed out from drinking. I woke up to my fiance at the time, who I no longer am with, shaking me. I was paralyzed. I was puking all over myself. And I had this out-of-body experience. I literally like pulled back from the moment. And I was sober in my mind, crystal clear. And I thought, I'm killing myself. I'm killing myself. These choices I'm making are going to put me in the grave. And I woke up the next day, and I stopped drinking. Haven't touched alcohol in 15 years. And I decided that, okay, well, I don't want to just live. I want to feel like a superhero again. I want to be a badass. I want to feel like I did when I was a gymnast, like that guy swinging around on high bar. That's the way I want to live my life. That's the standard I want to set for myself. And so I got to work. First thing I did, I went back to the thing I know best, exercise. The best medicine in the world. The one thing that positively affects every tenet of aging, according to Sandra Kaufman. And the better shape you're in, the more you're able to actually charge those channels. So it's a positive feedback loop. Started studying courses with sports medicine, certifications, and understanding how the body worked, how to train it, metabolically, strength-wise. I overhauled my diet. I basically tested my blood on every diet there was to personalize it for myself. Looking at, you know, various testing, supplements as well. And all of this is my supplement cabinet. That's one half of it. Sandy's been in it before, and we've gone through some of it. But this was, based a large part on Sandra's books. I've been doing that for years. I kind of defer to her for a lot of my decision-making on taking these supplements and really making sense of all of this stuff. I got into biohacking gear. You know, when I started before the biohacking movement really, I think, took off. And when I started using some of these devices, I mean, if you think about it, if you are bound to Earth, you're affected by heat, cold, energy, light, and what's the other one? What am I missing? Talk about sleep deprived. I just came back from Houston where we lost power for two days, but and oxygen, right? So started trying to not only create protocols, but then how could I use these different things that would affect my physiology to maximize these protocols and get a larger return on my investment of time and energy. Got into testing my body. You can see nobody uses 23andMe anymore, I don't think. not unless you're not a part of this community, right? But, you know, testing myself, my sleep, my metabolism, DEXA scan, my gut, my brain, lots of blood labs, really trying to wrap my head around physiology of my body. And then I found this book. Now, I don't recommend you go out and read this book. It's a little outdated now. But what it did is it opened me up to what functional medicine is. What is integrative medicine? And how they go after treating the root cause as opposed to just treating the symptom, right? And this really got me saying, I need to work with a really good doctor. I want a functional medicine doctor. I found myself a functional medicine, anti-aging doctor. And we started uncovering what I call my bottleneck. And my bottleneck, the picture on the right is how I looked, but this is my cholesterol panel. If you look at my LDL particle count, it's almost right at very high. If you look at the size of it, it's high. And then if you look at the LP, lipoprotein phospholipase 2, that is an enzyme that gets elevated when you have arterial inflammation. So that's a sign of atherosclerosis forming. And this scared the living hell out of me. I was like, Jesus, I was on one of those ketogenic diets. I was doing the Dave Asprey diet at the time. The danger coffee is dangerous if you're not careful. My physiology, nutrition is so weird. People fall into camps and they become so evangelistic. You become this evangelist of a certain thing. Oh, it's a ketogenic, or oh this, or oh that. And it's like, just test your physiology and figure it out. But most importantly, you need to know, in my opinion, what your bottlenecks are. And that's going to be, what did all of your gene line die from before you? Right? You need to know that stuff, and you need to start making a plan now. We don't want to wait till we get pre-disease or disease and then start going, well, now I got to do something about this. So it's really, taught me that there is kind of an order of operations in this framework that we have to do. And then I read this other book. This guy was called himself Dr. X. He wasn't a doctor, but he was in Europe, and he kept talking about peptides. And I was like, what is, and nobody was talking about peptides. This was 10 years ago. And I kept going like, what are these things? And so I got into them, and he was also really good with a bunch of other stuff and supplements. But it started this journey down a peptide rabbit hole where I started going to conferences where I was the only guy in the room who wasn't a doctor. And now, funny enough, that conference is happening June 15th in Vegas, and I'm the host and a keynote speaker there. Yeah. So it's kind of neat. I took the doctor's courses. I was in his office hours where it was only physicians, and I'd be asking questions, and he'd be like, that's a great question. Who is that? And I was like kind of chuckling because, probably wasn't supposed to be on that call. But anyways, so that kind of got me, after this, being a world-class athlete, being out of shape, washed up, alcoholic, to at 44, I felt like I had done it. I became that superhero I wanted to become. I rebuilt myself. I engineered this protocol to somehow defeat this thing of aging and regain what I had worked so hard to have in the past. And then this happened. Ugh, the worst is an injury in the world. Has anyone ever torn their Achilles in this room? Is it the worst injury in the world? Terrible, right? It's crippling. My therapist that I was seeing because of this was like, Steve, you got to take it easy on yourself. They call it the Achilles tendon because it's withstood thousands of years, right? And you imagine these warriors and that were decimated after they tore their Achilles. That's it, no matter how great you were. And I was working on a Nike commercial, and great shape, starting to feel good. I was working with a 2-time Oscar-winning director. He did The Birdman and The Revenant, Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu. And they whispered into my ear and said, hey, can you come back tomorrow? We want you to do a whole nother day of shooting. And I was like, oh, this is great, man. I'm back, And I'm in my 40s, mid-40s, and I'm doing gymnastics for a Nike commercial. And the ground wasn't really that safe, and I was just about to tell them, I think we should stop. And I held my tongue, and I ended up tearing my Achilles, and I was furious. I mean, I have to be honest. I was absolutely furious. But I'll tell you what this thing taught me. I had been head down for a long time trying to learn, and I never felt like I owned the knowledge. I was always borrowing it from these people, these doctors, these experts, these scientists. This injury is when I said, I'm doing this. This is my time. I'm taking over. I know how to do this. I own this. I know how to do it. Called up my anti-aging doctor. I said, I want to go on growth hormone. I want maximum healing capacity. Got home from surgery, injected right above my Achilles with some peptides, healing peptides. They're known to rebuild and help rebuild tendons. Took a bunch of essential amino acids because I was basically rescaffolding that tendon. Blood flow restriction training. I threw the kitchen sink at it. And I did all my recovery where Kobe Bryant, Conor McGregor, like all the best go. And in 5 months, I was running, and the record was 6 months. And I got back on top of that mountain again. And it was a big learning lesson for me because it really taught me that, you know, you're always going to be in a state of learning. There's always going to be a Sandra Kaufman who's going to drop a nugget on you, and you're going to be like, oh, this is a paradigm shift, right? But you own what you know, and the more you can take ownership of your health, the more I believe you come into every single lecture you watch, every single speech you hear, every podcast you listen to, you come at it with a different mindset. You come at it from a place where you're meeting them halfway, not just sitting on the sidelines like a critic. Well, I guess that's pretty good. And where you don't really partake as much. You're just kind of gathering some information and kicking the tires, so to speak, right? So, that's great, Steve. What does it have to do with my longevity, right? Does everyone know who that is? Is Brian Johnson? Yeah. So he's a very interesting guy, right? You know, super interesting. It's funny. I told Jean this earlier today. She said, you should mention this. And I said, I see him, and I totally respect what he's doing. It's kind of like an Olympian's approach. It's very structured. He's got a lot of resources to throw at, and you can tell he's got incredible discipline. Reminds me of that 4-5 year into it when I was trying to be perfect. It's gonna be perfect, you know? And let me tell you, you're never gonna be perfect. Never. There's no such thing. It is foolish to even try that. Instead, you're just pruning. Again, Sandra drops this thing, great. I'm gonna add those in, prune, right? And you just keep moving. You are a moving target. Some things you'll do your entire life, probably for the rest of your life. They're just things that are just indigenous to being alive. There's some things that as you age, you're going to start moving into a different cycle of your life, and you're going to need to start implementing some new things, right? So I'm going to just say this is how I view longevity in a way. In its most simplest form, if I just stripped everything away. Step number 1, you've got to mitigate disease, right? People get really clever sometimes. They're like, oh, I reduced my metabolic age by 10, 12, 15 years. Really? Did you reduce your plaque in your arteries by 10, 15 years? Right? Think about that for a second. Who cares if you can live to be 180 if that unchecked plaque buildup is going to give you a stroke at 85? Who cares? You got to take care of this side of the longevity framework first. You need to know how your family members and everyone before you didn't make it. And you got to have some sort of mitigation strategy in place. If it's cancer, you better start screening now. You know, if it's cardiovascular, you need to start looking under the hood. You've got to have a plan, right? Peter Attia's are really good for this stuff, in my opinion. You know, his latest stuff, I think, really covers a lot of that ground. Then the second thing is, let's increase the health span, right? This is your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, your stress management. How much utility can I get out of this body? Can I be a 90-year-old and still have complete, full mobility? Can I have that, right? And then the fun part is the age reversal. Is it possible? What can we do, right? Like, what's out there? What's coming? What sort of things are we? What paradigm shifts are we finding that we can really sort of rebuild regenerate the structures of our body? So, I mean, this is kind of not really much that important, but I tend to think of, you have full body enhancement. Well, NAD does quite a bit of stuff, right? You need it to power the cells to repair, genes. You need it to make cellular energy. Anything that increases blood flow, well, that's a full body enhancement. You're going to get more blood flow and oxygen to every organ in your body, right? So sometimes I think, okay, is this a operating system enhancement? Then you have your systems management. This would be like your endocrine system. Hormones, right? They start to decline. You start on broadband, and then as you get older, you start moving to dial-up, right? This communication network starts to break down, so we have to kind of look at it from a systems perspective. Then you have your organ health. So it could be your heart, your eyes, your liver, whatever it is. Sometimes you got to keep an eye on, again, maybe something that tends to show up in your family line. And then you have the cell. And the cell is where all the aging research is happening right now, because really at the end of the day, that's how we truly understand how we age. So what sort of tools do you have at your disposal? Well, from the behavioral aspects, because we can again, it's not just taking a pill to change our cellular behavior. You can do it with behaviors, right? If I exercise, I can change things that are going on in my cells. So your sleep, nutrition, your exercise, your stress management, you gotta have a plan and a framework for this stuff. This is your health span. You just can't get away from these things, in my opinion. Maybe at someday, thank you. I mean, I'll be honest with you, at 50 years old and feeling the way I do, I will say that really managing this part is where I really, my discipline comes into play. And I really think it breeds consistency. It really does. What do we got here? Oh, then you got the hallmarks of aging. Or you got Sandra Kaufman's 7 Tenets of Aging, right? So now, this is where you got to start taking a deep dive, and you got to roll up your sleeves, and you got to get into the cell, right? This is where we all struggle to learn biochemistry. We sit there and we see all these things that Sandra puts up there. If you take a little bit of time to learn some of these ways that we age, and what I do is I just pull up AI Assistant, and I'll just, anytime I come across anything I don't understand, I'll ask AI. Sometimes I'll ask AI, hey, create me a really quick course on biochemistry. Get me up to speed on this particular thing. They'll do it. So it really kind of helps to get the most out of someone's lectures, like Sandra's, if you can start to understand these cellular pathways through which we age. And then you've got your tools, right? So we have a longevity framework, get your disease, health span, then age reversal. Then we've got our behaviors, that's our health span. Now we have our tools. What do we have at our disposal that are external? Testing. Start looking under the hood, start learning your physiology. Artificial intelligence is really beefing up in terms of diagnostics and wearables. Very interesting stuff. Supplements, medications, hormones, peptides, bioregulating peptides, stem cells, exosomes, gene therapy, biohacking gear, plasma exchange. We're go to RadFest if you want to learn all these things, right? But this is like your arsenal, right? You know what I mean? And then finally, if you want to follow me, I have a podcast, and if you want to take a picture of this, you can all reach out to me. I'm happy to share any information that I've come across or that I know. And then, see if I have anything else. That's it. Questions? All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen. That was beautiful. I heard you in breakfast, but hearing you now, yeah, I can feel like how you progress into this longevity journey. And you know, as we take the questions from the audience and also online, I want to remind you, you can send your questions in the chat as well. I want to ask you how you briefly mentioned about your mindset and then going from like this gold, you know, this medalist gymnast into somebody for longevity for the long term. How do you did the transition mindset wise, and what are you doing for yourself now in regards to your mindset?
Well, I think it's sort of a spontaneous thing that happens on a moment by moment basis throughout the day. I mean, I'll be honest with you. There are days I do not want to work out. I just don't. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm human, and I always tell people, I don't confront people, but I have a lot of conversations with people about exercise. I don't know if they truly appreciate what it can do for you, and I always tell people that it's a non-negotiable. And this is where I train my mind. It's like, do I brush my teeth? Do I bathe? Do I get dressed? Do I go to the bathroom instead of going into the bathroom in my pants? I know it sounds ridiculous, but there's things that you just are non-negotiable. Like I mentally, I'm always like, it's in a put exercise in that. Or people were like, I don't like exercise. Do you like taking out the garbage? Do you like doing chores? Do you like cleaning up? We do things that we don't like all the time, right? You don't have to like exercise. And I can tell you the reason why you probably don't is because you're a little bit out of shape. Because once you're in shape, you don't want to get out of shape because you feel better, right? So sometimes like exercise is very tangible, and I think it's very easy. We can all relate to the dread that we've felt and the negotiations with ourselves, like, I'll do it tomorrow, or maybe I'll do it. And so I think there's big moments in our lives. Everyone in this industry that I've talked to, I always ask them, what was your big moment? Kind of like my moment where I came home drunk. But then you have that for some people, and then you have the sort of real-time decision-making that has to happen on a moment-by-moment basis. And I think just coming to things like this and listening to people like Sandra or myself and having a community around you will help you make more positive decisions. You know what I mean? It's the community aspect cannot be underappreciated. No.
Absolutely. And then also, how is it different, like the way you approach exercise, in a more practical matter, as a gymnast versus now for living long? Because I know there is a difference, as far as how you take it. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So I'm all about exercising for longevity because here's the thing: all your sports-specific stuff still sits on if you're human with 4 working limbs, bound to Earth's gravity, and you breathe oxygen, you're going to have to do stability, you're going to have to do strength or resistance training of some sort, and you're going to have to do some sort of metabolic conditioning. You might be like, that sounds exactly like Peter Attia. That's sports medicine. That's what you learn. These are the fundamentals. And I think what you can do is you can do the minimum effective dose of each one of those. You don't have to kill yourself. I think what people don't understand about exercise is it's an adaptation. It's climbing a set of stairs, and you can only do it one step at a time. But most people go to the gym, and they try to jump 10 flights in one fell swoop. And I think that, I always tell people, if you took a stopwatch when I started exercising, I'm doing my strength training today. As soon as I start exercising, take a stopwatch and time it. Then when I stop, take it off. Add it up when I get done with my workout. It's 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes. It's really a lot less than you think. And the more you can borrow from authorities and structure something that leans on the science, that is well structured, it becomes very minimal and almost invisible in a way. But it still allows you to do, like, I'll just show you. So I don't do gymnastics anymore, but if I do my strength training, my metabolic fitness, and my mobility, well, that's all I need for my specific type of gymnastics, right? You know what I mean? So, right here.
Okay, so we have a few questions in the
That's
crowd.
the only way I can keep up with Sandra. That's the only way. It's like, I got to do something.
All right, thank you, Stephen, for coming. I really enjoyed your presentation at the Rathfest. I was very touched. And you said something that stayed with me until today. You said, never be 4 days in a row without working. Yes! And that impacted me. I want to thank you for that because I got it, you know? I got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be at conferences and people will come up to me multiple times and they'll tell me, I followed everything you said at Radfest. And it turned around my physiology. I've lost weight. I've lost 30 pounds. I got my life back. And I had it's Steve's 5 rules of exercise that I originally came up with. But one of them is don't ever go 4 consecutive days in a row without exercise. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm telling you, I've trained elite athletes. You give an elite athlete 4 days off, they come in just dragging. Everybody. We're human, right? If you stick to that, don't ever miss 4 days in a row. Just don't. You'll never fall off. Even if you just go in and just do stretch, just don't miss it, you know? So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's great. Any other questions? Do you have any questions?
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Let's take advantage of this. Do you have any tips as to build in a routine, like an exercise routine?
Yes, I do. So on the stability side, which is really like the ability to keep your body over your center of gravity, right? And to be mobile. I've done a dynamic stretch routine where every time I go, I've done this for 35 years. Start with the shoulders, here, go to the trunk, here, I move to the hips, I go a little bit in the knees, ankles, come back up, I do the hips, right, a little bit of this, hips again, come down, get my lower back, sides, each side here, I stretch my shoulders, I open my chest up, I do my torso, I do my Achilles, and there's a little bit more than that, but I say rust never sleeps. It never sleeps. Sandra will tell you, if I'm not mistaken, your muscles will glycate over time, right? You get in a straitjackets. If you're in a straitjacket and you can't move, it's because your muscles your tissue's glycated, it's stiff. You got to break it up. Dynamic stretch. It's so easy to do, and you just memorize it. I've memorized it for 35 years. Same one I've done for 35 years, and I have 0 rust. It is exactly like I did it the first time. Look, how do you define aging? It is the gradual loss of function of an organism over time. If you cannot move, that is a loss of function, that is a biomarker for aging, in my opinion. Right? No. Just start with that basic dynamic stretch routine, right? You will not dumb down the neural drive. We're not talking flexibility. We're not pushing. Just do a nice basic one that gets your shoulders, your torso, your hips, your lower back, and then your shoulder stretching, and then open up a little transverse plane and your Achilles, and you're ready to go.
She's asking if you can do this again for those that are online. She doesn't have a
Oh,
microphone.
okay, like
with
standing
a little
right here?
bit of list.
The whole thing?
Here.
So could you do the same thing, a little less range, because I'm kind of videotaping them for everybody.
Yeah.
Little less range of motion for people that aren't as flexible. And that would be really good because most of us can do it.
Okay, great. All right. And okay, perfect. So I always start with getting the shoulders moving. You know, shoulders moving, right? Shoulders moving. And this is like pulling, you're like a ninja or something, you're pulling swords out, right? Then this kind of, and even a little bit of cross, you know, just getting some heat into the tissue. I like to also put a bunch of sweats on. Sometimes I'll put even gloves and a little hat on, trap heat, to warm the tissue up. All right, stretch over here, torso. It's the torso. And I just start moving those hips around, getting this rust out, right? Get the rust out. Both here. You can even do it with your knees, too. You can just be like here. Just kind of get these things, get the pops out, right? Then just kind of squat down a little bit. Try to straighten your legs a little bit, if you know, as much as you can, you know? And every time you do it, it'll just get a little bit easier and easier. You'll be like, huh, okay. We're just taking like a rubber band and we're just stretching it out, right? We're just, and then if you can straddle a little bit, most people are like this. So what you want to try to do is just kind of try to flatten your back out a little bit. You know, if you get you know, you can even kind of stretch a little this way. And then as you get better and better, just let gravity sort of work its way to where you can start just hanging a little bit. Then once you're hanging, you can kind of move through your hips even a little more, and you're rotating the stretch across the 4 different hamstrings, right? Same thing with here. You can just be like even bent knees a little bit. You're just trying to push it open, push it open. Come to the ground. You guys into this still? Okay. I like to do what we call I always had Russian coaches. This is the babushka, stands for butterfly, not to be confused with babushka, which is grandma. So, and then here, so this is kind of just still, you're always moving. But here I try to like just see if I can get a little bit, you know, still again with a flat back, you know. And you just keep moving. We're not testing our flexibility. We're just kind of moving. We're just moving and stretching. Then I'll kind of put my arms behind me, get my shoulders a little bit. I'll take one shoulder. This is a little advanced, actually. A lot of people don't realize your shoulders rotate. This is like saved my shoulders, but we can kind of leave that just like this. You just here, right? And then if you want to, you can start moving into a little bit of this, where you can just side to side, if you can sit like this, you know, a little bit. I mean, for me, it's like eventually I can still all the way, you know, like, and then I do this still. You don't have to do this. This could be dangerous, but I do what's called this is like very important if you ever land on your head skiing or something. You want to be able to have that, in all honesty, if you know. And then I stretch my back. You can just kind of be gentle with this. You start here. If you have to pull up to here, that's fine, right? And then also always be rotating a little bit down, you know. And then for your shoulders, if your shoulders are really tight, you can come to something like a device like this, and you can just here and really keep your core tight. Stretch your shoulders, because you can't lift a weight over your head if you only can go to here. You want to be able to go to here, right? So stretching those shoulders, and then finishing with some of these twisting things. Arms out like Superman, just light twisting. And then laying on your back. We've all done this one where you just bring a knee up, right? Both sides. I also like to do the wrist. Gymnasts do the wrist, but I just kind of a little bit. Again, we're just always moving. If you watch me do this in the gym, I'm always moving. And then finally, a little bit of just here, you know. I like to bend and stretch it, and also straight leg and stretch it. You know, if that's hard for you, just lean against a wall and do it, right? And even this stuff, if you just kind of stand and stretch a little bit, and then this, I forgot to do this during the hips, I think. But you've got to get these hips open, because a lot of people are sitting and they got this hip hinge. They don't stand like this. They stand like this. And then what they have to do to compensate is raise their back. And now they're wondering why their back is killing them. So as this gets tight, the butt turns off. So what we got to do is we got to stretch this out, stretch it out, and then strengthen the glutes a little bit, and then you'll stand up straight and be stacked. Just memorize something like that. and just keep doing it. I have a free online, if you go to stephenmccain.com, there is a video of me doing it. Just watch it, take it to the gym with you, and mock up your own, memorize it, and just keep the rust off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job. Great job. So, so if somebody wants to then say work with you, because I know you mentioned that sometime after that, or wanted to train with you some, or maybe even just learn some of these techniques from you, how would they do that?
Yeah. Well, I do have on my website. It's a free guide. I'm not selling anything. I have an entire longevity. It's called Smart Fitness Guide. If you go to Stephen
awesome.
with the P, and you can literally, it has the video of me doing the stretch. It has how to fix your shoulders from being like this, how to fix your hips from being like this, how to strength train, all broken down to its basic stuff. So
On your website.
yeah,
Super.
StephenMcCain.com with a PH.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.